Welcome to episode 112 of the Maple Leafs Hot Stove podcast. I'm Nick Ashbourne, joined as always by Anthony Petrielli.
He doesn't even can't even keep a straight face. It escalated so quickly. He can't
It
even keep
is,
it together.
yeah, we'll try and be somewhat together in this episode, but it's wild, kind of how much has happened since we last recorded. Like we recorded a week ago, and the theme was, what is the direction of this team? What's the point of what they're doing? What's going to happen? And you've seen three dispiriting losses, dispiriting in different ways. And that dilemma that we discussed doesn't really feel like a dilemma anymore. Like if you look at Puckpedia, and I know not Puckpedia, sorry, Money Puck, they have their playoff odds. I'm not saying that's gospel. I'm not saying that's something you have to count on. But like as we looked as this was recorded, and I'm sure a lot of people are listening on Thursday, but we're recording on Wednesday. The Leafs had the same chance of making the playoffs as having the first overall pick. Like that's where your 2025, 2026 Maple Leafs are after this brutal run at home against the Golden Knights, the Avalanche, and especially the Sabres. I mean, we're going to go through everything that's gone down. I guess I'm going to throw to you, Anthony, on the broadest possible scale. How are you feeling about your Toronto Maple Leafs right now? And then we can kind of narrow things down.
I mean, it is pretty wild when you really sit back and think about it. It They got 1 out of 10 points at home. And what were they? 16-5 at home going into this homestand. This is They haven't been this bad at home in a 5 game homestand since the very end of 1984 through to the beginning of
It's
1985.
insane.
Like that's incredible. I know it was a hard schedule. We all knew that going in. This is the 2.5 week stretch that's really going to decide things. We teed that up multiple times. I think a lot of people understood that whether we did tee it up or not. It was pretty clear when you looked at the schedule to sit there and say, this is it. This is the hard part where things could either they show us that they're good or it goes completely off the rails. And halfway through, you're sitting there going 2-1-1. You probably should have went 3-1, and you felt pretty good about it coming home. You're like, if anything, the hardest part was you went out west, 3 hour time difference, really hard schedule, and then man, did that just fall apart. You know what it reminded me of? Um, It reminded me at the very end of the Pat Quinn era where they were battling for a playoff spot. I don't know how much you remember. I don't know how much you were invested into the Leafs at that time,
I was
but
invested in the
but
Pat Quinn Leafs. Don't.
so do you remember they played Montreal back to back? Well, you probably remember the Kovalev elbow on Darcy Tucker, right?
Yeah.
That was those games where they played them in a home and home, and it was basically, you need to win these games if you have a prayer of getting in. And they didn't just lose both of those games, they got destroyed. They just got wrecked. And this kind of reminded me of that a little bit. I had started thinking about it, going, yeah, I kind of felt like this before. When was that? It was, oh yeah, it was like 20 years ago, kind of. And yeah, I mean, we look when we last recorded, I'd sat here and said, like, they better beat Vegas because they're not beating Colorado. Like we know this to be true. They are not beating Colorado twice in 2 weeks. It's just not happening. And they lost the Vegas game. And not only did they lose it to me, I thought they were bad. I thought they were just terrible for most of that game. And then, so after that, I was going, okay, I mean, Colorado's, we know that's a loss. And now you're actually staring down the possibility of going 0 for 5 or 0 4 and 1 if it really makes you feel better. And they have a leadership meeting between, losing to Colorado and playing Buffalo. And they didn't come out and play well to me. They had 13 shots on net, and you were playing Colton Ellis at that point for 28 minutes. I mean, you can't even explain that. And you were at home. Like they unequivocally looked bad.
And they came out poorly at the beginning of each of these games. And I know they scored some goals against Buffalo, but like if you look at the first periods, if you look at kind of like halfway through the game, where were they sitting in terms of the flow of play? Like there's a case to be made that they were shit at the beginning of all of these games. And sometimes that gets under the microscope, maybe even a little bit too much. But the Vegas one, that one's so tough to swallow because it just reinforced the idea that this team is on a different wavelength than the people who care about this team. Like I've listened to a lot of radio this week. It's not always part of how I would prepare for this podcast. Like normally I focus on, watching the games and sort of reading what there is to read. But I was curious because I was like, how are people really responding to this and how like what is the vibe? And the word disconnect came up a lot if you're listening to like radio related to Lisa in the last couple of days. And I'm not trying to just parrot that again. But one thing I thought was, made sense to me about that is that as the Leafs, you can say, listen, this Vegas game is important because we need 2 points. And like in this locker room, that's what matters is getting us to the playoffs. But like the world cared about the game. Like Toronto cared about the game. Like the people cared about the game. And that was never, not only was that never acknowledged with the play on the ice, like that they didn't rise to that challenge on the ice. Like that was never acknowledged by the players in any way, by the coach in any way. And like you can even just say, listen, I know that this is a game there's going to be a big atmosphere for. I know people are going to be up for this game, but they pushed all of that aside. And like it's okay to do that and then come out and take care of business. But they like pushed all that aside as if it were nothing and then came out and face planted. And then Matthews didn't speak before the game, didn't speak after the game, captain the Maple Leafs, the guy who was with Marner and all this time. And like again, I know the Vegas Golden Knights are a very good team, and you can lose
I
the
don't
Golden
even
Knights,
think that
and
they are. I honestly think they're super overrated. That Buffalo,
they're a good team.
Boston, and Montreal and Ottawa all just beat them. They literally beat
They're maybe
every other
not
team in the
playing.
Atlantic.
They're not playing at the height of their powers right now. Whatever.
I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying they're not a wagon. They
Okay,
just went through the Atlantic and everybody got 2 points against them except for the Leafs, who got zero.
for sure. But there's a way to lose to Vegas with dignity, and
Say
and
Toronto Maple Leafs and dignity in the same sentence right now.
they didn't do that. And I don't want to harp, too much. Sometimes I find the talk about like the off ice stuff and the character stuff, it can get tiring and it can get repetitive. But there was like an abdication of duty for Auston Matthews to be the captain of the Maple Leafs in that moment. Like he said the
Yeah.
game was fun. He was like, that was fun. And I'm
One of
like, you got
this.
your teeth kicked in a game where people were filling the barn and actually like super excited about a regular season game. Doesn't happen very often. People genuinely cared about this game, and you showed up, played awfully as a team, got your teeth kicked in, and your response is like, I'm glad that some people cheered for Mitch Marner, and I don't even necessarily need to have that conversation about fans who cheered for Mitch Marner and haranguing them, although, there's whatever. But like he backed those fans and then said that it was fun to get absolutely steamrolled by the Golden Knights. And I'm like that I know a lot of what happens as the captain of the Maple Leafs. That's in the room and the way you inspire the guys. And we don't always know that. And maybe he's better at that than we think. But like part of being the captain of the Maple Leafs is coming out and having a public presence and having your finger to some degree in the pulse of what's going on. And he's just a zero on that. Like, and he showed himself to be a zero in that moment. And that's brutal. That's like, that's a pretty brutal thing to see for like the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs to be that. And again, like there's much more going on, but that I wanted to stop on that for a second because he did some absolutely dog shit captaining in the context of that Vegas game.
So here's where I'm at on the Vegas game. Clearly, they didn't give a shit about Mitch leaving in the sense that they weren't hurt by it or upset by it. If anything, it seems as if they understood it and it just kind of was what it was to them. They didn't take it personally or have any chip on their shoulder about it.
Or if they
Just
did, maybe that was more at the time last year when they
they,
figured it was going on as opposed to now. I feel
they
like people knew it was happening for a while.
I don't think that they had any chip on their shoulder about it whatsoever, which I think is wrong, to be clear. We'll use the Islanders as a benchmark of that. You could even look at Boston when Phil Kessel left. when guys leave and come to Toronto, their teams care. When players leave Toronto, it's like, oh, Toronto's a shit show. And the players sit there and go, yeah, you know what? It turns out we agree with all you people and not the
Oh,
fans that cheer for us. So park all of that aside for one single second here. Say, okay, fine. They like the guy. They don't hold it personally against him. They don't have the same feelings that the fans do. In my view, you just lost to this team like a week and a half ago where you blew four two-goal leads and they won in overtime. And Jack Eichel celebrated so hard and made a point out of it on his fourth point of the night. And you are desperate for points in a playoff race. So you could throw every Mitch Marner thing out the window for just a hot second there, which should have made it even more heightened. But let's park that. You're just playing a team that came back and beat you. Like, we're talking about Colorado sitting there going, there's no chance they're beating Colorado twice in 2 weeks. And then for the Leafs, it's like, oh yeah, we're just playing these guys again. And then Eichel scores right away and lets off the absolute loudest woo. The loudest. He's staring at the fans. He's making a dog and pony show out of it. If you're just a competitor, I don't know how you're not looking over the boards when he's coming by to train down his bench and just calling him out. Like that would make me sick as a player to watch an opposing player do that in my arena. And it's the guy who just had 4 points against you when you blew multiple leads. And it's like a week later or whatever it is to get retribution. And you just like, it's just a stinker through and through. And sure, did they come back in the second? They did. But like playing, I don't know, 12 good minutes of hockey at home doesn't nullify everything else, and you lost the game anyway. So, look, they didn't care about that game the way the fans did. I do think that there's something there. We've talked about this a bunch of times. Like Toronto Maple Leafs are a public trust. Like they're these players will come and go. The Toronto Maple Leafs will not. They will be here end of time. They're going to outlive all of us. Like Father Time's undefeated, other than maybe the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like they're sticking around. These guys will come and go, and the Leaf will remain. And you're watching that disconnect in real time, and to the extent of which I'm allowed to say slash sworn by secrecy on is I can tell you like they weren't heartbroken by it. We'll call it that after the game or the next day or the day after that. And I know that for a fact. And you just kind of watch it all and then you get into Colorado and Buffalo and some of the other things that have happened. I don't care that Nylander gave the bird. I care about it in the sense that he got fined, and then we have a clear example of someone else doing it who didn't get fined. And for like the past 2 years, every day I sit here and I go, it's absolutely criminal how the Leafs are treated compared to the rest of the league. And now you have the easiest example of all time. Because if I bring up one hit and I compare it to a Leaf hit, someone's always going to Zapruder film like the little stupidest thing about it and miss the overarching point of why they're the same. But you can't compare two guys flipping a guy flipping off a camera. It's the exact same thing. And
if
one
anything,
guy
Sergachev was closer to the camera, more like more clear. Yeah, I mean, it's
like
hard for me to get mad about
so
the Willie aspect of it. Like it's
so it's
stupid.
stupid and it's immature. Like you're 30 years old. Like you're a grown man. Like that's embarrassing. I'd expect like a 22-year-old to do that. Like you're 30. Like what are you doing? Like that part I find just extremely immature and just it just speaks to how little common sense that they have. And then the next comment, so we'll park the suspension, DOPS, Peros doesn't know how to do his job stuff. And then after the Buffalo game, I don't know if you saw, but there's a comment from Matthew Nyes that was like, I haven't even looked at the standings. Like, that's how confident I am that we're going to make the playoffs. And I'm sitting there going,
Based on what?
what kind of delusion is going on in this dressing room? Like, you guys need a reality check. Like, you genuinely need a reality check. I stand by. I think if the team was healthy, generally speaking, throughout this season, which obviously would include Chris Tanev and their goalie tandem, and Willie just not missing a bunch of games, more than he ever has, I still think that they'd be a playoff team on paper. Like I'm not looking at Detroit and Buffalo's on one right now. I'm very curious how that continues. Like, are they going to win 17 of their next 20 after this again? I don't think so. So, like, that's going to come back down to earth, you'd have to think at some point. Probably not enough to miss the playoffs at this rate, but I'm just saying. But you listen to these guys, and it's like, I swear to God, I think April's going to come down and they're going to be like, oh shit, we're missing the playoffs. Like, that's what it feels like. Like, they think that they're just good enough to just turn it on whenever they want and they'll just be fine. And they're living on a different planet. Like you're talking about disconnect with the fans. I think they're just disconnected from their own reality of their situation right now. And I don't think
Yeah,
Berube's disconnected on that. I think Berube is delusioned on a number of other things that we'll get into. But I think he's keenly aware of where they are. I think he's losing his mind and he has just no way of getting to these guys. And this is the shit that we're seeing. And I think the whole thing is just an absolute, like it's a clusterfuck right now.
100%. I mean, you talk about them being, like you said, it's not necessarily even a disconnect from the fans. It's a disconnect from reality. It's a lack of self-awareness. Like, thinking about the Marner situation. Okay, you guys don't feel aggrieved by Marner leaving. You're kind of fine with that. You think you're good anyway. A lot of you have like lifelong friendships with Mitch Marner, realistically. Like a lot of these guys grew up with Mitch. Fair enough. Like you don't necessarily hate this dude because he did his own thing, but like you can acknowledge it. Like you can pretend to care. Like you can, even if you don't care, even if you don't have those feelings, you can either pretend to have those feelings, which is probably the smart thing to do, or you can at least acknowledge that those feelings are out there. And they don't do either of those things. And that either with their words or on the ice. And then you have Nylander, and like I'm an unapologetic Nylander apologist. Like almost everything Nylander does is kind of good with me because generally speaking, I've always been of the opinion that the positive he brings outweighs the negatives. I think that sometimes people expect hockey players to be a certain way, and when someone's a little bit different, they get an undue amount of criticism. But like it's
Nick, you
just
can't be doing
no
crap like that. You're the
it's just
second
no
best player
upside.
on the
Like
team.
and like also something that's not talked about, and maybe I'm misreading the footage. I haven't watched the footage like
His
closely enough.
apology where he's like smiling.
Oh, well, yeah, the apology is shit.
He's
But like
like, yeah, sorry. Is he smiling? I'm like,
is he
come
not
on,
like
man.
holding a big bottle of vodka in the shot? Like, is that not like what this is really is about? Is just like sipping vodka in the
That
booth and he
that
just wants the camera to fuck off? Like, is that not like people say, oh, I did it out of frustration. He didn't do that because he's like frustrated with how the Leafs are playing or
no.
whatever. He's like, he just wants the camera to fuck off so he can drink vodka with the boys in the
I would have
box.
respected more if he just said I was like I thought it was funny.
I
He
don't
clearly
know.
wasn't frustrated. If he just
No,
said I
no.
thought it was funny and I screwed up, I'd be like, okay, well at least that's what actually happened. Like, don't lie to me. Don't say you're frustrated.
Yeah,
You're
it
lying.
made no
You can't even
sense.
say it with a straight face. You're straight up lying. I just it's not those isolated things. Like it's like the string of them. And I know you'd mentioned like Matthews not talking after the Vegas loss is, I'm sorry, that's table stakes. That is like basics. You have no choice. I'm sorry, you're the captain of the team. If you don't like it, then you shouldn't have accepted the C. That is the bare minimum you could do is go to the camera. I'm sorry, like we talk about Nylander with the finger, like you're 30 years old, like that's just being an adult. Like don't do it. It's stupid. And Matthews not talking after the game. Sorry, man. I'm sure you don't want to talk to the media. I'm sure you're tired of the Mitch Marner questions. I'm sure that actually, I'm not sure that you're that upset that you lost, but we'll go with it that you are because it's the heat of the moment. But you have to do shit you don't want to do in life. I've probably done like six things today alone I don't want to do. That's just the reality of growing up and being an adult. Like you can't hide behind being a 23-year-old kid all the time doing whatever. Like you're a grown man. You're closer to the back nine than you are to the front nine. And if there's a lot of guys who enjoy the good things, I think that come with market, success, you name it. And then when it's the bad things, they don't want anything to do with it. And you're looking at it, and that's the hardest pill to swallow. And then I further elaborate on it to the point where I think to myself, I don't know if we've had this conversation a number of times, but probably not to the level of if you want to call it failure, I think you can, of the season. Like not to the level of failure they've had this season ever. Like they've Matthews made the playoffs his entire career. I don't know if it's going to keep him up at night all summer. I don't know if he's going to sit there all summer and say that's never happening again. Like I thought he would come back with a vengeance. And I think, from this season, just relative to the way last season ended, Mitch Marner, all the talk, you know, you had all these like lists not naming him, a top flight center in the league anymore, and some of the criticism and chatter out there. How is he going to survive with Marner? Like I really had hoped he'd take that personally, and he hasn't. And he has played better lately. Like objectively, he was good against Buffalo. He was. He had 3 points.
Sure.
He played it was a goal and two primary assists. He was legitimately good. My issue is he's always like he is good, but that's not being a leader. Like he doesn't drag the team to victory, and he's not going to sit there and be accountable to anything. And he's not going to have standards or be some level of like psychopath that, the other guys in the room don't want to hear it from him because he's out there giving it to them based on the way that they're playing. And you listen to, Connor McDavid a week ago, it was straight up, I have to be better. And when I'm good and going, the rest of the team follows my lead. And he knows that. And this is the guy that's leading the league in scoring right now. And, after a few of these losses, I forget which game of this homestand, I think it was the Detroit one, but don't quote me on that part. He was asked like what has to happen, or, something to the effect of like what's going on. And it was like, we have to be better. I'm like, no, you have to be better. There's no we. Like, you're not winning or losing these games because like Steven Lorentz, even though that was a terrible offensive zone penalty he took against Buffalo, like that, I'm sorry, he's not the difference. Like you go basically the entire bottom six is not the difference. Like you are the guy. Like when you have an offensive zone face-off against Detroit, up 1-0 with 30 seconds left in the period, you get rinsed and then you don't even get back. And you're the man. Like that can't fly. Like that is not a thing. And so, yeah, you just look at it's disappointing how little they've matured, I guess I'd call it, over the course of their careers. And I think the original Shanahan thought at the time was that losing would harden them and that they'd learn from it and they would get better. And it's just made them worse, if anything.
Yeah, Matthews, a lot of the time when we talk about Matthews, and again, we talk about things like leadership and character and what he cares about and what his goals are and what matters to him, I feel like we're a bit out on a limb, like we're interpreting things because he doesn't give much. And sometimes I think in the past that has led, I'm not going to say you, but it's led me, I think it's led people to give him the benefit of the doubt because, like, oh, we don't really know what's going on. Like, maybe these things are happening behind the scenes. Like, maybe he does have more of that edge than he shows. Maybe he's being calculated. But it comes to the point where, like, when you are a leader and, like, the C is on the jersey, sorry, like, you're the leader of the team. That's the way it works. When you're the leader, we can't be reading fucking tea leaves. Like, make your intentions known. Make what matters to you known. Like, don't leave things up for interpretation. We shouldn't have to sit back and be like, is Auston Matthews someone who cares? Like, is he someone who puts effort into being a leader for the team? And like some of the stuff sounds kind of like cringy to me if I read it like a transcript of me saying these things, but like this is where we are. Like this is a failed season. The Marner thing was a bit of an inflection point. It's going down the tubes a little bit. And at no point has the way the results have changed Matthews in what we're seeing outwardly. Like at no point has there been like we need to turn the season around. This is an unacceptable level. It's going on according to our standard. And even, sometimes you'll get, like you said, the we. You'll get a little bit of the we from him. Like we need to play better. We need to take our game up
It's
a
never
notch.
me. It's
But
never
it's
I have to
never
be better.
I. It's never, addressing, like you mentioned that play against Detroit, like an absolutely unacceptable outcome. The with the Marner thing and him not talking, I heard James Myrtle went on Fan 590 talk about, and he said like the media didn't request him, which is like insane. Like that's a dereliction of duty from the media members who it's like I don't want to be super like jumping down their throats, but like legitimately that's insane. But he should want to like he should be like, yeah, I'm gonna step out there and say something. And like as much as, John Tavares was hardly like the most inspiring leader outwardly,
No,
at
I hate
least
the
he was
Tavares snare. No, I'm sorry, no.
I'm not
He
saying
set the
like
tone for that game. I don't know why Craig Berube would start him that game. I've never looked at John Tavares his entire career and been like, man, you know who should go out there and set the tone shift one? John Tavares. He'll have a
uh,
heartbeat.
no, I get it, but it's just like the basic like
Tavares is
the
minus 10 in
pass
his
the
last 10 games. He's been completely unplayable.
oh, I'm not talking about how Tavares is playing right now. He's been very bad recently.
It
I'm
had to
just
be
saying that
Matthews. Like, I don't regret, like, he's obviously not doing a good job. I think that's crystal clear. I would never argue otherwise. But to me, it had to be Matthews because it's like, if they're going to go anywhere, then this guy needs to emerge as a leader and be the guy that drives the bus. Instead, he's not emerging as a leader. He's not driving the bus, and we're getting the results. But, like, to me, you had to do it. He just had to do
oh,
better.
I agreed with it at the time. I wasn't like, my God, that how could they take the C away from inspiring leader John Tavares, who's been setting the tone? Like, I 100% understood why it happened, but I don't know. Here we are with it, and like, it does make you, it makes you think of like a little bit existential about this Leaf team right now. It's like, the idea of Matthews and Nylander, those are your two best players, and you can change things around that, but how like what is the belief level that there is going to be a version of the Leafs where Matthews and Nylander are the best players and you're going to do something impressive with the team like that? Again, this is a low ebb moment for sure. I get that. It's easy to be a prisoner of the moment, but I have never felt less confidence that having that as the basis is going to lead to a wildly successful Toronto Maple Leafs team.
So I think a few things have happened here, which I think are like, it's like, how did we get here? So, not an uncommon thing that has been discussed over the years, especially in the Sheldon Keefe era, is they won a lot of games on talent. There was years of stretch of hockey where you'd sit there and say like, wow, they played like shit, but they won because they were just more skilled. And even that last year that Sheldon had, right? It was like Matthews blacked out, obviously with a 69 goal season. And they were raining 6-on-5 goals with the empty net. It was like they'd play like crap, and then they just had so much talent. They'd put them all out there at the end. They'd be like, all right, let's make it happen. Let's cook. We got a little man advantage here. Let's cook. Right? Or they'd be very power play dependent at times, which is ironic to bemoan now, given the state of the power play this season, which has actively been one of the biggest reasons that they are where they are, with a natural shout out to Mark Savard as per usual of every episode. And they could rely on their talent because they were so talented. A lot of these guys could play like Mitch is really good in the regular season because like 80% Mitch is a very good player. And then he struggles in the playoffs because when everyone's going 110, he's not able to elevate to that level that makes sense to you. Like he's like you're not going hard 82 games. That's just impossible. Like there's a baseline of play that you have to, meet, and his baseline is insanely good. And they had a bunch of these guys, right, where their baseline is very, very good because they're all just naturally so talented. And then when it came time to elevate, they couldn't elevate, but on a simple night in, night out basis, they would get away with it. And they knew it. And they often took advantage of it. And then this season, they no longer had that at their disposal. Like it actively had to be like, no, we need you actually going and like pushing the bus here and making it happen. And they haven't played like that by and large. There's been a ton of games where they play with the pace that you would have expected when they had Marner, except now they don't. And you're kind of watching going, why does this look the way that it looks? And I've I had a friend kind of throw this out to me, and I've been thinking about it a lot. He, so I don't want to take credit for it, so I'll say he said, um, Matthews, as much as people blame the early season struggles on like injuries and things like that, I think a part of it might have just straight up been he didn't want to play the way Berube wanted him to play and wanted them to play, right? This like dump and chase, forechecking system. And when we've seen them have some success right around Christmas and beyond, that changed, right? Like we talked about that a lot. They started using the middle of the ice more. They started skating the puck in, and suddenly Matthews is good. And I think there was a part of him who's like, I scored 69 goals. I'm not dumping and chasing. And which I think is fair to some degree, to be clear. But now it's shaded so far the other way, where you're kind of watching the team and Berube's loosened things up, but to a crazy extent. They can't defend at all. You have it's one thing to look at Matthews and Nylander and say, okay, like you can cross the blue line and make a play. But you have like Easton Cowan doing it. I think he fell 4 times against Buffalo. Like I'm not trying to be hard on him, but I think the whole thing is just an absolute again, it's just a clusterfuck when you look at it where Berube wanted to instill one way to play. I don't think the team had any interest in doing it. I don't think the team is remotely in a mental space where they have to like grind and do the things on a night in, night out consistent basis in order to win games. You have a coach who can't systemically coach them or deploy them correctly. And you have the whole thing and it's a mess. And throughout the whole time, Brad Treliving has sat on his hands with his one notable thing being a waiver claim on Troy Stetcher, who I like a lot, but I only
Yeah,
like
that's a
him as much.
successful, your one successful move was successful.
I can only like him as much as one can humanly like Troy Stetcher in these trying times. And there were a million things that we talked about that I think that it's just the chickens coming home to roost, right? Of for years of getting by with not playing properly, and now they just don't have the horses to continue to do it. And you have this like very aloof and entitled culture, and I think that's coming out more. And then you look at on a more micro level of just like the Berube and Treliving era, we'll call it, which might be short-lived at this point, hopefully so, where it's just like mistake after mistake. Like they haven't been able to break out for about a year and a half consistently. There's a reason they get caved in at the end of games of whenever they have a lead. They have no ability to like sustain offensive zone time. You listen to him after they lose to Buffalo and have the homestand that they do, and he's talking about them defensively, which is fair. They got outscored 25-12 in 5 games. You're averaging 5 goals a game against a game. You're going nowhere. He's correct on that. But then he also said we scored enough to win. No, you didn't. You had 12 goals in 5 games. That would be the lowest goals per game in the league if you
I,
extrapolated that. You didn't
I, t-
score enough to win. You didn't defend well enough to win. The bottom line is you don't have the puck enough to win, and you still don't know that. You still don't know that, Craig.
I think last year was a problem in the sense that there were warning signs out the fragility of their success and the way they played, and like the goaltending and the power play and some finishing helped them have better results than, their underlying play dictated. And then I think Berube thought you can just kind of run that back with less talent, which is an interesting move. I'm really sick with Berube of him saying things are the problem that are his job to fix. Like I've taken down some notes of things like Berube has said recently. And like, he said, until we decide to do things right and keep the puck out of the net, this is what you're going to get. It's your job to make sure the players do things right. Like that's the job of a coach. The job of the coach is to motivate the players to do things correctly.
If you're
And
if you're playing Max Domi against Tage Thompson all night, you're gonna get what you got. A nice free pizza up the middle. He might as well have called his name and joined Tage Thompson in the train line by the bench after that goal. It was brutal. And Domi is who he is. Like that's who he is as a hockey player. That's been him for years. So if you're gonna run it, then you can't sit there and say, well, and bemoan all of the defensive miscues. Like, well, that's a gift that you would expect him to provide. Like right now, Jake McCabe and Morgan Riley like they're just gifts. They're just free goals against from both of those guys on a nightly basis. I mean, even though he actually did pull off the 360 in his zone before throwing a grenade across the ice, the fact that he did that at all was like, I don't know where we're at right now that Jake McCabe thinks the way that he's currently playing that he can make a 360 in his zone and then put a wrist shot flick pass up the ice. And then we talk about, sorry, I want to get to like the micro things of this year. I've said it a million times that Easton Cowan should have been developing in the American League. He looks terrible right now. Like he looks awful. Like it's very upsetting to me to watch him play the way that he's playing because he shouldn't be here. He should be developing in the minors, which everybody knew. This is that's like the classic Leaf stupidity of like 100 years of Toronto Maple Leafs. It's like just send him down, let him play. He's a good prospect. I like him a lot. He's not that good. He's not walk into the league good. That was clear as day, and he looks like it now. Like I referenced him falling a bunch of times against Buffalo. I was like, what are we doing here? Like, how is he still like at some point just salvage it, just spare everyone, himself in particular, and just let him go develop. He hasn't played 14 minutes once in 2026, Nick. He's not he's an afterthought on the power play. He's not going to play penalty kill. He's not playing at the end of games when they matter at 5-on-5, but Craig has no problem throwing him out there for 3-on-3 overtime. And it's just that's not developing him. That's brutal. That's on Treliving's hands as much as it is Berube's. Arguably, it's on him more because at some point you have to be a boss. We talked, I forget if it was last episode or the episode before. Obviously, Tavares has hit a wall. I get it. That one I get. I think we all get that. But you just keep riding him out there as the 2C. And it is what it is. He's getting absolutely torched. Absolutely torched. We just mentioned the -10 in 10 games. It's awful. I mean, he's a free goal against right now. In reality, he should be a winger. We've talked about that as well. But you had to prepare. Like this is not surprising. Like you had to prepare for that. You had a chance. You could have. He hasn't moved anything. Tavares has been the 2C this entire time. I'm not even sure if he is aware that he's just getting absolutely crushed in his minutes right now. I'm not sure he's aware McCabe OEL is getting crushed in their minutes right now. And you just kind of like go like I'm not saying that they win a bunch of these games if Nick Lawton or Nick Waugh or Scott Lawton, Nick Lawton, is centering the second line instead of John Tavares. But like at some point you got to look at it and just say like we can't do it. Like that can't be a thing. We got to change it up. Like what's changed over
yeah,
this whole 5 game homestand?
they've not shuffled the lines at all at a time when those lines are simply not performing. And I'm like, I agree with you. I don't think there's some line shuffle away from an amazing run of success, but at the same time,
You have to
they
change things.
things are going so poorly and nothing is changing.
You have Matt Benning come in and he actually plays a pretty solid game to my eye, against the Islanders. I had no issues with his game that night. Never touches the lineup again. Benoit is, if he's not a free goal, he's a free penalty. He's a free something that's benefiting the other team. Hasn't looked good in weeks. And you're kind of watching it going, I think the pinnacle of Benoit was essentially saving the goal against Colorado in Colorado on the PK with like a minute left. Kudos to him. That was a great play. Since then, absolutely unplayable. And his spot is seemingly safe. I know they just called Marshall Rafai up. If anything, I hope he's in just to see something different. But you kind of just go through it and you're like, Troy Stetcher has cratered playing with Benoit. And look, so I slag all these things because Berube just hasn't done a good job this year. Like he objectively has not done a good job this year. I don't think he was able to sell them on the way that he wanted them to play. I think that they looked often disinterested for months because of that. I think when he finally loosened up the shackles, you started to see guys, namely Matthews, compete a little bit more and play better. I don't think he just like magically got healthy because they had 2 days off at Christmas. It wasn't like, oh, he went home for Christmas and had some turkey dinner and iced up and now he was good to go. No, I think that they actively opened up their game and Matthews wanted to play that more and he's looked better. I also think it's helped him a little bit with some of the line mate combinations and stuff, but I'm also not going to sit here and say that Max Domi clearly made him better than like William Nylander could have. I just don't think that he wanted to play the way that was put forward, which I also think is a problem on Matthews' end as well. Like as the leader of the group and someone who's supposed to set the tone, I think he was pretty disengaged from what was happening. And now you just kind of have the group where it is where it is. I think Berube's frustrated at the roster that has been provided to him, and I think that there's some merit to that. I think Berube's looking at Treliving being like, what do you want me to do with Matthias Michelli and Nick Robertson and Max Domi all in the same lineup?
And Easton Count.
Right? You can't have four of those guys in a lineup. Like we talked about it in September. It's like you can't even have three of those guys in the lineup. That hasn't changed. It's actually just extrapolated since then because Cowan hasn't developed at all. I won't say at all, but like he hasn't developed to the point where he's making strides or playing better or looking good. Like he actively looks worse now than he did when he had some jump and the hockey was crappier in October. And so like I think he does have some legit gripes. At the same time, if I'm Treliving, I'm going, did I trade a first for Scott Lawton so that he could score and play under 10 minutes against Vegas when he was like one of the only guys with a heartbeat? Did I trade a first for Scott Lawton to watch Matthews and Max Domi go up against top lines and give up freebies night in, night out? No. Like, I think he has some fair gripes of how guys have been used and how things have kind of shaken out that way. Like, you had this reasonable top four going at one point. Like, it wasn't reasonable on paper, but it was reasonable in practice with McCabe, Stetcher, and Riley Ekman Larson. At least it made sense. You had your matchup pairing and you had an offensive pairing, and then you could put together a third pairing. And now you've demoted Stetcher to the third pair. That pair looks terrible. McCabe Ekman Larson is bleeding goals against. You have this Riley Carlo pairing that has been basically bad since it started.
Yeah, I mean, it's
And
never really worked, even though that was the idea when they brought Carlo on.
which was fair. I understood the logic to it. And so it's everyone right now is ultimately what we're getting at. Like it's everyone. It's Treliving. Like there's blood on his hands from this whole thing. Berube just I think deployment systemically, basically I think everything that he's done has pretty much been mediocre to bad, just objectively bad. And then you have a lineup that also deserves a lot of blame, like immature, lack of accountability. The effort is not full marks on a night-to-night basis, which I know that can be a lazy criticism at times. But, you look at the past 2 weeks, they handed free wins to Minnesota and Utah. Just straight up. They were like, enjoy your 2 points. Like those were no-shows. You can have one of them, but you can't have one and then come back have another one. in quick succession. I get that they're going to happen at times. It's an 82 game season. That does happen. But it just you look up and down the lineup and it's or up and down the organization, right? And the cutoff was sort of American Thanksgiving for firing Berube for me. It's like, what are you going to do it now for? Like we talked about this in November. That was the time to do it. And this is kind of what you like you want to ride it with him, right? Treliving not only did not do that, but he came out and like doubled down on Berube publicly. Like you can't survive that to me moving
No,
forward.
I don't think that, I don't think anyone here is justified retaining their job. And like it sucks to be like the person again talking about kind of like lazy commentary. It feels lazy sometimes to be like, I'm the guy with the axe saying fire everybody. But also, like, what have these people done to retain their job? Like that is a worthwhile question. And a week ago, we were asking, where, you know, is there a way for the Leafs to be in the race? Like, what is the trajectory of their season? And it does feel crazy, like only a week later, only 3 games later. But like, I feel like the question is no longer about like, is there a way for the Leafs to be good in 2025, 2026? Because like, I think the answer is no. I don't think there's a way for this team to be good with this, with
Well,
this
well,
coach, with these
Nylander's probably going to
players.
come back before the Olympics and like tune up for
I'm
the Olympics and play well. And but
I'm
like
sure
unless
that
you're looking at me and saying Chris Tanev's returning, and that was the thing, Chris Tanev was a real adult in that room. Like we've talked about
sure, and
this. Like he
I'm
would go in there
sure
and say, "What the hell's going on here?"
there will be a 4 game stretch where they look good and they play good hockey at some point between now and the end of the season. I'm
Yeah, I'm
willing to
not
project
endorsing it.
that.
I'm just saying like that's probably going to happen.
Sure, like that'll happen at some point, but I don't think it's reasonable to say, oh, the Leafs are going to be good in a meaningful way from
No,
now until the end of 2025, 26. So the question is like, when and for what reason are the Toronto Maple Leafs going to be good again? When are the Leafs going to be good again? And what's going to make you confident that will happen? Because it's not that they have like a pipeline of young players coming over the hill. Like we know that they've sold off all their assets. It's not because of the
all of
current
them.
it's not because of the current like brain trust. It's not because you're like, oh, Brad Treliving is the guy to fix this. It's not because of the guy who's sitting in the coach's chair. It's not really because of and again, Auston Matthews, as much as there's been criticism of podcast, elite level talent, obviously. Same with Nylander. But like those two players, like that's really your core at this point. Nyes can join that core potentially if he steps up and gets healthy and all that jazz. But like the core is really like Matthews and Nylander. Like that's kind of the core. Forget Riley, like genuinely forget Riley, and that's a different conversation. Tavares is kind of aging out of it. So it's like the core is not inspiring confidence, the front office is not inspiring confidence, the coach is not inspiring confidence, and there's no like thing you can point to of like, oh, that's the future that's coming around the bend. And that is a profoundly grim place to be. And as much as that might seem like something of an overreaction to what's happened in the last little bit, like it when you look at the 30,000 foot view of the Maple Leafs right now, it's not a super exciting sight.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to unpack that probably with a whiteboard to kind of draw through it. I think there's probably a lot of questions and things that they're going to have to work through in short order. But all that to say is, I do think a competent, strategic general manager with a vision and a plan and a proper coach, because we just spent all this time talking about Craig. I honestly think if had they pulled the trigger and brought in DeBoer in November, I think they would have made the playoffs this year. I think he's a good coach. I think he would have fixed a lot of crap, and I don't think he would have taken any nonsense the way that even though a lot of people thought Berube wouldn't, he kind of has. Like he's kind of
100% he
been
has. There's
it's
he's taken a lot of nonsense. He's not molded this group into one that has a different identity. He's
and
not gotten tough either in public or seemingly in private. Like, no, Brube's not delivered on that promise when he came on.
and two, I don't want to say his credit, but um in fairness, I guess I'll say I do believe that he is muzzled somewhat by MLSE. I think like the corporation MLSE is not one to rock the boat. And I think that's a problem. And we haven't really talked about him, but Keith Pelly's a significant problem, like a significant problem. And look, the first sign was when he came in and torched all these presidents for all the teams and talked about streamlining and, like removing red tape. And here's the thing, for anyone who's ever been part of an organization that's at least mid-sized to above, when someone new comes in and they start torching executives and they talk about streamlining and they don't backfill any of the expertise or knowledge that they have torched, that doesn't make your company better. It doesn't. When you just start firing a bunch of guys or girls or whatever, and you don't actually bring back any talent to make up for what you've lost, and now they're reporting to you, and you don't know a thing about hockey. You don't know a thing about basketball. You don't know a thing about soccer. You literally manage the European golf tour. Like, it's basically a meme at this point. Like, you're basically, I wrote this once and Alec edited it out, which I was kind of sad about. But that it's essentially the equivalent of you writing you're the commissioner of your fantasy football league on your resume. It's basically the same thing. No one cares about the European tour. Definitely not here. For golf, no offense to the tour there, but no one cares. That's not even in the same stratosphere as the Toronto Maple Leaf Hockey Club. Like, I wear my Leafs hat if I go to Europe and people come up and talk to me. Like, these are not comparable things. No one's talking to you if you wear a European golf tour here in Toronto. No one cares. Go to America. No one cares. So, like, he's a problem. Like, that is a significant issue. And so, to the Berube end of, like, I don't think he probably isn't one, I guess I would say, that's going to be able to navigate the corporate waters in a way. And I think at times we've started to see some of these cracks this year with his comments, right? Go ask them. Wasn't my call in terms of Stolarz starting or not conditioning in the end. Like, I think we've started to see a little bit of those cracks.
He's not a happy man. You don't
No,
get this as much as we're unhappy with him. He's not happy with his situation.
but I do think he's been muzzled. I think the organization is, again, they're not one to fan the flames. We've talked about it a million times of the frustration of, like, they don't step up and support the team in terms of how they're treated unfairly by the league. I think, again, you have the clearest example ever now. Like, I've thought this for years, but now it's like you can't even argue. Like, even my friends who would be on the fence who aren't Leaf fans or whatever else, now even they're all like, okay, like, clearly there's something there. You can't. The Leafs have been the most suspended team in the George Peros era, and they're one of the softest teams in the league, if not the softest team in the league. They don't have a single guy that can fight right now. Like, actually, like, if you were to play Montreal and Arbor Jacki challenge their bench, who could fight him? Nobody. Nobody. He would tune up any guy on the team. You look, it's like Tanner Jeannot. Like, you go through it. Like, there's not a single guy on the Leafs that is like a heavyweight fighter. There's not a single guy that, like, actually throws a hit that hurts. Like, Benoit will throw a hit at times. McCabe will throw a hit at times. Like, Nyes will throw a hit once a month. But there's not a single guy there where you're like, that guy hurt someone. Or that guy took a run that might have ended his season if it connected. Like, there's like no bad bones on this team. Scott Laughton's competitive. I'm not saying, like, he's extremely competitive. I like it.
But
I
he's
think they've
not
needed
even
that. But
remotely dirty.
but yeah, he's not like, I'm gonna go run around and, like, really try to inflict some pain on someone because he's just like, he's a smaller guy relative to NHL players. So you can't square that the Leafs have been the most suspended team in this era. And now you see stuff like the Nylander thing. Again, like, I don't care about the finger or the $5,000 fine. Like, Nylander is going to be okay. He's still probably going to go to Sugo 6 times a week. And the other night he's going to go to Yorkville. So whatever. It's the principle of it, right? And the organization stands by and they do nothing. And then you have this kind of like coach who's like muzzled, and you have a GM who's just been kind of sitting on his hands. I don't know if he's paralyzed by what's happening and shocked, or he just doesn't have a clue, right? Like we had mentioned Dougie Hamilton a few weeks ago, and I'd said like he'd be the best defenseman on this team the second he walked into the room. Like, are you watching this defense, Nick? Like, and you missed the boat. Like, you could have basically got him for free when he was healthy scratched. And now, like, Luke Hughes gets hurt. Hamilton comes back in. He plays a little bit better. He scores. Suddenly, they need him a little bit. Now the Leafs are desperate. It's like, you, if your whole purpose was salvaging the season, which at that time was clearly on the table, they just came off a good Western road trip. To me, there's no planet where you could have you bring him in there and then you go 0-4-1 at home. Like none. Like if anything, just the injection of a good player probably puts you on your toes a little bit and injects some life into the group to like really like get things rolling
And they don't have many opportunities to acquire good players because right now the cap
for
is going
free.
up. Good players are not hitting free agency. They don't have the assets to trade for good players. So like basically their only cudgel to wield in the task of upgrading the roster is take on salary. And he was kind of the perfect example of that. And you know, like you said, it seems like that opportunity's passed them by. And I don't
And
know.
I don't even mean he's a savior. Like I don't want that to be
No,
confused because he obviously wouldn't be. But for a team that their defense is just bad, like it's bad. Like it's just a bad unit, straight up. And for a team with no assets and a team who really has been saying to us that they want to make the playoffs and that's what they're all about. And this is a veteran team and all this crap. Like that represented a really easy opportunity to actually get notably better for pennies on the dollar for a team that really had a clear need for it. And look, that's just a recent example because obviously that's very prevalent like right now. I think it's just been really unimpressive from Treliving as well. Like I think it's probably hit a point where like you just need to move someone just to like get someone off the team. Like it's just the the culture and the atmosphere right now. There's a lot of GMs who would move guys for less than kind of what we're seeing. Like it's just like, you know what? You should like I need to send a message to this group. Like it's just brutal.
yeah, and I think we will learn something about Treliving come deadline day. Because if it is a situation where, you know, it's just McMahon, it's just Lawton, and that's assuming that they don't sign extensions, which again doesn't seem super likely this moment, just because they're, you know, we're running out of runway for that. With Lawton, it's the issue of his role and possible reluctance to return. Maybe McMahon, who knows? But if he just flips like those guys for, you know, a couple mid-round picks, maybe the odd second like that is a pretty disappointing outcome.
You
Like you
might as well
really
join them
do,
on the plane. Just join them on the plane wherever they're going. It's like there's nothing to even say.
he needs to go deeper than that. Like he does. And again, it's not like, wow, you're gonna get an amazing haul for one of the RFAs like Robertson or Michelli, or like, oh my God, who knows what you're gonna but you know, Ekman Larson is interesting. They need to think
They
about
should get something really good for it. They should get two legitimate pieces for Ekman Larson. Like he's very good, having a very good season, signed for
good
nothing.
contract, some
Yeah.
term.
The Leafs have retention slots. Like they could get create like there's so much room for creativity here for someone with a brain, like to just like go ahead and do it. You know,
But
it's
that
like,
the last word I associate with Treliving is creativity.
yeah,
Like
but
he's about as
yeah,
conventional as it gets.
which is bothersome because you know I kind of I look at it and there's so many teams, especially in the West. Like I look at a team like LA and I'm like they should be all over the Leafs for either Lawton or Waugh. Like both of those guys would be good there. They lack centers. You know, they should love McMahon. Obviously, I think a lot of teams would. I think Edmonton would. I think Edmonton should also love either Waugh or Lawton. Like they should be interested in the Leafs goaltending. We know Philly's interested in the Leafs goaltending. Like you kind of go through it and you're like do something smart, man. Like I would I take on Andrew Mangiapane to get a much higher return? Yes, because I would look at them and say, like, that's a net negative for you. I'll take on that money. Hell, I'll even eat money that I send back to you, but I want like Isaac Howard, right? Like, those are the kinds of discussions that they really need to be having. Not this, to your point, where it's like, oh, okay, you traded Bobby McMahon for what? The Mason Marchment return, a second and a fourth, or a second and a third, right? And it's like, okay, like that's fine. Like you do need draft picks. I'm not begrudging that. But like that can't be it. Like you got to actually do some things if you're going to attempt, even remotely attempt to be the general manager of the team moving forward. Like you actually have to do some things where you're like, holy shit, that was a good trade.
Well,
Like you
because if
brought
you
in,
just trade the rentals, the implicit message is we were basically there this year. Like this team was basically fun. And I know like your point about if they were healthy, they would have potentially made the playoffs or if they'd made a coaching change. I do think that there are paths to them making the playoffs this season. Like there are alternate universes where that happens. But no matter what happens, it's still a very flawed team. And so to be like, oh, this just wasn't our
yeah.
year, we're just going to trade the rentals and we'll backfill a little bit and we're not going to change very much and we're going to be fine next year is a pretty awful assumption to make, to be honest.
And look, I think part of the problem moving forward is Tanev's their best defenseman, clearly. Like, should Tanev win the Norris this season? One could argue. Who's had a better season? Like, they've fallen apart defensively without him. That might be Norris caliber. But the issue is he's 36 and now he's going to go like a full year without playing hockey. And like, you might be able to expect him to come back, but I don't think you can expect him to come back and be really good. Like, it's a nice to have if he is. It's great. You can't expect that anymore. Like, you can't miss that much hockey, have essentially a chronic injury issue and like just walk back in at 37 years old. Like he's turning 37 in December. Like that's a tough sell, right? So if you had him all this year coming off of all last of playing all last season, yeah, I'd feel really good about the Leafs being fine this year. But now you're adding in this element of him not playing for a year and coming back at really old age with an issue that's pretty significant. Like that's a problem. Like that's like we'll talk about that more as we kind of like prep for the summer and things like that. But I want to square that when we talk about them being healthy this year and like making the playoffs and like thinking about just carrying that forward to next season, like Tanev completely changes that like the optics of it because you can't count on him anymore.
Well, that's not a position that serious teams are in. Serious teams are not in the position of like, man, we really need this
No.
chronically injured 37-year-old defenseman to come through for us. Like that's just not where your franchise can be. And you can be like, okay, things are broadly going well for us. Like you said, he's at this point, it's good to have what you can get from him, and maybe he'll surprise folks and he'll come back and he'll be as strong as he was last season. But I think that's extremely indicative of where the team is right now. That like that's something that they would really need to happen to feel good about their chances.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it more as we kind of get through towards the deadline. But to me, part of a successful deadline is just starting to shave off some of the dead weight. Like you just have to look at the team and say like we can't have these guys anymore. Right? Like if you like we're talking about having all four of Michelli, Domi, Robertson, and Cowan in the lineup. Like four offense first, undersized wingers. Like you can't have four of them.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
you can have four undersized wingers, but they better be really good defensively.
Yeah, it can't
None
be
of
a
those guys
third of
are.
your forward group.
None of those guys are. That's the one thing I'll sympathize with Berube because I know that he's probably looked at Tree and said, like, what is this? Like, what am I going to do with this? That's fair. That's a genuinely fair point on his end. So, like, two of them have to go. Like that, like removing two of those guys is part of a six. Like Domi just has to go because of everything that he represents to me, which is like he doesn't get the most out of his talent. He has no interest in doing any of the things that help you win games other than attempting to get points. Like obviously he's skilled. Obviously he can make plays. But like how can you not break out at 30 years old?
He's also like
How,
he's holding his position in the lineup hostage. Like he,
he's
as someone
unplayable.
who is
Otherwise,
supposedly gives them flexibility. Like when they initially brought in Domi, one thing people said about him is like, oh, this is a player with some versatility. He can be in the middle, he can be on the wing, he can be in various lines. Like, no, based on what we've seen, especially this season, like he can really only do the one thing. And as much as going into the year and at times this season, I've been like, okay, you got to have him next to Matthews. That's what makes the most sense. Like he's just not doing enough to justify that. And I don't know. Yeah, no one is interested in him at his contract. I don't know what getting rid of him looks like, but I think at this point it's fair to pull the plug and say, okay, this has not worked. This is not a situation that we can stick with over the long term.
you can't be looking at a guy saying like, well, he can only play on the top line and he's not a top line winger and he loses those minutes up there anyway. Like you can't do that. It's one thing if you say, okay, it works and it's really good. You're like, if you're the Penguins back there, like we have Pascal Dupuis and he's playing with Sid and he's not a first line winger, but it kind of works. But he checked hard. He was good defensively. He grinded. Domi doesn't do any of those things. So I think that's honestly a big part of the deadline for me. It's kind of just sorting through and saying, like, who do I want to move forward with here? Because I think there's a lot of addition by subtraction on this roster right now. I think if you do a good job of whittling that out and then making a few smart ads and hiring a different coach, I think they come back next year, hopefully healthy goalie tandem and better luck with health in terms of William Nylander and God forbid Chris Tanev and a few things. I think they're right back in the mix. I think some of these teams are going to fool themselves, Detroit in particular, moving forward as to how good they think they are or are not. And Boston too, probably. And so I look at that and say like there is opportunity here. I don't think it has to be like the absolute worst thing ever, but you need a plan. Like you've really got to have and execute a proper plan where we can all sit there and say, yeah, this makes sense. This looks good to me. You're hoping on like a young guy or two kind of thing, but that's fine. Like you can work with some youth getting injected into the lineup that's ready to go, not Easton Cowan, we're going to do it no matter what. Youth. So it's like man, like what a turn. Honestly it is. Like the five game homestand really, I know we talked about it last episode where it was like they're kind of getting close, it's on the border. But that just a stunningly brutal homestand and a stunningly like aloof and unaccountable group towards it, which I think plays just as much into it, to be honest with you, because it's like, you know what, even if they do kind of come back, it's like, who cares? You've kind of shown us like who you are, and it kind of just is what it is. Like it's just guys got to start going.
Yeah, I think that the kind of and this could be a whole other podcast. And I know we're sort of wrapping here, but the aloofness, the kind of unlikability of this group plays a big role in why people are feeling so resigned right now. Because as you mentioned, maybe there is a world where they go on a bit of run. Like they're fighting for their playoff lives right now. I don't
Do
know
they
if we can.
know? Does anyone know? Can someone show Matthew Nyes the standings? Let him know.
Yeah, it would probably be worth informing Matthew Nyes. But like I think to some degree, like the fantasy of, being a sports fan, loving a team is that like you feel like that team is in the fight for you, for your city. And like when we talked about the
For
disconnect
the
before, like
logo on the front, for
that's
like
exactly the opposite of what people feel right now. And so if they feel like, oh, the Leafs aren't in the fight for them in any way, shape, or form, even if the Leafs kind of crawl back a little bit competitively, like I don't think fans feel like being in the fight for the Leafs right now. And that's unfortunate. That's an unfortunate place to be. And you laid out, the case that they can change some things and things could look different next year. And I don't think that's totally false. I think it is a bit of a narrow road. I don't think it'll be an easy crawl back to where they need to be. And but we are talking at a low point. That's always worth remembering. Things are probably not going to seem this bad, maybe in a week and 2 weeks or
They're
whatever.
going to
Like this is,
bounce back. Their schedule is not that hard coming up. It was that when they had a hard schedule here, they looked like what they looked like. But their schedule
and
coming up is not bad.
but I think, yeah, when you have that hard schedule to some degree, that's when you show what you are and who you are. And they showed their ass during this time. Like they were as bad as you can be on ice, off ice. And, that's what has made this such a grim edition of the podcast. But honestly, I think it would be stupid if we had come out and done a podcast where we're like, this is bad, but you know what, guys, it's going to be great. And these are a bunch of great guys and we all love them and we all support them. Like, I don't think anyone wants to listen to that podcast because that podcast would be full
We've
of
pointed
shit.
out a bunch of things bad leading up to this throughout a bunch of the podcasts. Like we tried to buy them as much time as possible early on. It's like I did think that they earned some benefit of the doubt to having a slow start because they've done it a number of times with this group. Like fair. That to me, they did genuinely earn a benefit of the doubt. They've made the playoffs more than anybody else. And they're the only team that's gone 9 for the last 9. Like eventually that's going to end. Like, I think people got comfortable with that. We're just like assuming playoffs every year. Like it's hard to make the playoffs. It's hard to do it every single year. Nobody does it. Nobody's done it like the Leafs have. But kind of the way that it's kind of gone about and um, just sort of the way that they've acted and can they dig themselves out of that and really be honest with themselves. I think those are the things that you're questioning. Like we haven't even talked about Anthony Stolarz. Like, who's had a worse year than him? Like, he called out the team and then played terrible and then got hurt with the nerve issue and then didn't want to go down to the American League to play games, which is weird coming from, essentially a career backup who's pretty much only made the league like a couple of years ago. And then goes, right into the lineup. And I think for all the, like, I don't think he was terrible in that game. But one goal was, and that was a backbreaker. Like that third goal was terrible. What are you can't blame him on the first goal. It's like, did Auston Matthews, Jake McCabe, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson all turn off their controller at the same time? Like that was a backdoor tap, and there's nothing you can't blame him for that. And that's a brutal start too. It's like we have a goalie coming in that hasn't played in like 2 months, and that's how you start with him, like a minute into the game. That's just terrible hockey. Like that's what a terrible hockey team does. Um, But man, like what a bad year for him so far. Like I like him. I think he's actually like a pretty engaging, thoughtful guy. But tough year. Like I'm rooting for him to figure it out down the stretch, but whew, he like Tanev hasn't played all year, and I think Stolarz has still had a worse year given those things.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. He is a good standard bearer for what has gone on with the Toronto Maple Leafs in 2025, 25, 26. I think we're going to wrap it there. As I said, a fairly grim episode, but I think, the level of honesty we have to have is the honesty that is missing with the Maple Leafs. We have to fill the gap in there a little bit, have some awareness, have some accountability, have some honesty. And the result of that is kind of tearing this team apart a little bit because they deserve it. So, like I said, grim moment. It might look different in a week, might look different in a couple of weeks, but a lot of things we talked about today are things that are kind of deep in the bones of this franchise right now. So we'll be back with you again, another episode next week.